everyone. I'm still working on the Fallen Heroes video, but it's a difficult one for me to do personally. And to shine a light on some of the true greats of the racing world, I decided to look at what I consider one of the greatest racing series of all time. It is an epic, so grab a cuppa if you need one. And YouTube won't do me any favours because it's so long, so do share it wherever you can, please. Some of you may remember that in the 1970s, in addition to the FIM World Championship Series that covered Grand Prix for 50, 125, 250, 350 and 500cc motorcycles, and the AMA Series in America, there was also a 750cc Motorcycle World Championship. The idea of the Formula 750 Championship began in 1971, but it was based on a collaboration between the AMA in America and the ACU in the UK that had been developing since 1968. The British and Japanese manufacturers were beginning to have more influence within the AMA, and in 1968 we got the end of the 250cc penalty clause for overhead valve engines that had existed since the founding of the Class C racing in the early 1930s. That meant the British and upcoming Japanese manufacturers could run the same 750cc displacement as the side valve Harley KRs, which meant machines like the new BSA and Triumph Triples and the 750 Norton Commando were eligible to race. The other major development that helped produce Formula 750 class came in October 1970. That's when the AMA was accepted as a member of the FIM. The British manufacturers were taking part in racing in the United States, but the rules were completely different to those in force in Europe, and the ACU and AMA saw the opportunity of bringing the AMA under the FIM umbrella could open up. The FIM asked the ACU to try and find a formula which could provide the foundation for a set of racing regulations that could be applied on both sides of the Atlantic, and early in 1971 representatives of the ACU and AMA met and the concept of the Formula 750 class was born. The new class would be open to all solo motorcycles from 250cc up to 750cc and took its name from the maximum capacity permitted. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, try to remember to hit the like button. It costs nothing and helps the channel a lot. And if you subscribe, it means that you find out first when our latest videos are released. There is a second backup channel called BAREBONESMC My Motorcycle Madness too. It's part of my ongoing effort to try and keep the YouTube gods happy, so come join us there if you haven't already. I do link other interesting videos made by other real bikers around the world on the community tab on the main channel page too, so it's always worth taking a look to see what's happening. Anyway, let's get on with it. Formula 750 rules stated that all major components should be those used in standard production motorcycles, and a minimum of 200 of each of the bikes had to be built. MV Agusta was still the dominant force in the 500cc class in Europe, and this gave the other manufacturers a new chance to challenge them on the world stage. The FIM had little choice but to recognise it, and in 1972, organisation of the new series began. By 73, the series was given full FIM status as a European Championship, but the AMA riders and then the Australians all came to the party. In that first year, it was won by the legendary Barry Sheene on a KR750 Suzuki. The bike was roughly based around the GT750 road bike, but almost none of the components were shared. Flexi Flyer, as it became known, was fast, but it handled like a pig, and it was only the masterful hand of Sheene that could tame it. In 1973, the inaugural year of the new 750 class, races were held at 7 different circuits. The first race was in Italy at Imola, followed by a French Grand Prix at Clermont-Ferrand and a Swedish round at Adderstorp. The Finnish Grand Prix at Hämeenlinna, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and then Hockenheim in Germany with the final round at the fabled Montjuic Park in Spain. The point system was complicated to say the least. Each round had 2 races. and points would be awarded based on the average times of the two races. Then, only the 4 best results achieved by a rider counted towards the championship standings. The first race was a whitewash that showed the unbelievable riding of the great Jarno Saarinen.
Approaching the hairpin for the second time, Saarinen has pulled up right alongside Duhamel. Duhamel goes wide and Saarinen nips through.
He stormed to victory in both races on his TZ750 Yamaha in what was possibly his most glorious day's racing. Sadly, it became his swan song, because less than a month later, in one of the darkest days of motorcycle racing, he was killed along with the equally great Renzo Pasolini. This race showed the world how good the great Jarno Saarinen really was. Sheen took his only victory of the year at the next race at Clermont-Ferrand, but in Anderstorp it was Jack Finley who took the victory. When the riders went to Finland, it was Saarinen's countryman Tapio Lanzavori who unbelievably took a TZ350 to victory. The fast corners suited the smaller bike, and Lanzavori had the local advantage. The track had almost no straights, and in some riders' eyes was the hardest and most dangerous track in the world at the time. Silverstone came next, and it was Paul Smart who romped home first. Again, it was the Suzuki that best suited the fast track, and Smart won both races. Next, it was Germany. The point system had worked until Hockenheim, but in Germany, Jack Finley won the first race, but crashed in the second. As there was no aggregate time over the 2 rounds for him, he wasn't awarded any points. Suzuki objected, and the points were then awarded based on the rider's position in each race. So it was all a bit of a mess, really. The great Stan Woods brought his Suzuki home first in the second race and was awarded the aggregate victory, so the title was still wide open. In the last race of the year at Montjuic Park, it was John Dodds who came home first. Again, it was a little TZ350 Yamaha that was best suited to the tight, twisty circuit, nestled on the top of a hill in Barcelona. But Sheen brought the Suzuki home second, and his overall results gave him the title. The final standings were Barry Sheen first on 51 points, counted out of a total of 61, because only the best 4 results counted. Second was John Dodds with 47 points on the TZ350. Third was Jack Finley on 45 points on his 750 Suzuki, and in fourth, Stan Woods on another Suzuki with 41 points. The sadness of losing the great Saarinen and Pasolini did cast a shadow over the racing that year, but the victory of Sheen was emphatic. His consistency through the year meant even after disqualification at Silverstone, his results were enough. He didn't score at Imola, but along with his win at Clermont-Ferrand, he came in second in Finland, Germany and Spain, and took a third in Sweden. That consistency is what won him the title and began his march into the Hall of Fame. A year later, in '74, the second year of the series, the organisers failed completely. The championship was unfortunately raced at only 3 circuits. They were Jarama in Spain, Hämeenlinna in Finland and Silverstone in England. John Dodds from Australia came home first with 27 points on his TZ750, and it was the year that the TZ showed its dominance for the first time. French genius Patrick Pons came home second overall with 22 points, and Jack Finley gave Australia a third place too on 16 points. Pentti Kohonen came home fourth equal with Paul Smart, both on 15 points. Finley and Smart were the only riders on the Suzuki, with Yamaha dominating the field. Kohonen won on his home turf in Finland, and Smart did the same at Silverstone. But this was the year that Canadian Yvon Duhamel first showed his face on the European stage. He was central to the development of the KR series of Kawasaki's, and although he only came home in 6th overall, his second place at Silverstone was an astonishing ride, and he cemented his name as a true giant of the British racing fans. There were a few other names to mention who came in further down the field. Victor Palomo came in 7th on the only Ducati that was racing, and his brother Jose Maria Palomo managed one finish on the only Norton entered. This was also the year that Tony Rutter was given a second Kawasaki KR750, and his finish at Silverstone sent the home fans into raptures. He was a well-known young racer who everyone knew would go on to great things, but his speciality was street circuits, and in the end he went on to win 7 Isle of Man trophies. In 1975, Sheen was back, and the championship was run over 9 rounds. Final points would be awarded on the 5 best results for each rider. This was the first year that the racing went to America, but it still had only European Championship status. But it was as close as we had ever got to a true World Championship series. Daytona was the first race of the season, and it was the Americans that dominated. Gene Romero brought the speed block Yamaha home in first, and the Daytona yellow paint scheme imprinted itself on the public. Steve Baker came home second, and a young, relatively unknown Venezuelan came home third. Venezuela wasn't known for much of anything at that time, but the great Johnny Cicotto would make sure that everyone knew about them afterwards. Unfortunately, for many UK fans, Daytona would be remembered for less happy reasons. Sheen had a horrific crash, and very few people thought he would survive, never mind recover. But recover he did, and just 3 rounds later at Magny-Cours, he was back on the top step of the podium. To call that ride heroic is like calling a blind guy short-sighted. Sheen was held together with nuts, bolts, wire and angle iron. The pain was palpable by anyone who got close or could even see his face. That familiar smile was a wincing grimace as he folded his broken body onto the bike. He proved all the pundits who said he would never compete in the race wrong, but that was after all what he always did best. After Romero's win at Daytona, it was Johnny Cicotto who won at Imola at the Italian Grand Prix. Patrick Pons took the 3rd round at Matet in Belgium before Sheen's unbelievable victories at Magny-Cours and Anderstorp. Tapio Virtanen won at home in Finland at Hämeenlinna before Sheen stood on the top step again at Silverstone. In the last 2 rounds, Yvon de Hamel got his first 750cc victory at Assen in the Netherlands, and Patrick Pons was on the top step again at Hockenheim in Germany. Sheen came home 2nd place in the championship, just 1 point behind Jack Findlay, who unbelievably won the championship without winning a single race. Final standings were Jack Findlay first on 46 points, Barry Sheen second on 45 points, Patrick Pons third on 42 points, and Christian Bourgeois fourth on 29 points. All except Sheen were riding the TZ750. John Newbold was the next best Suzuki rider, coming home in 5th on 27 points. The championship leaderboard at the end of the season read like a Hall of Fame roll call. Johnny Cicotto was 6th, with 4 riders sharing 7th place. They were Steve Baker, Barry Ditchburn, Victor Palomo and Tepi Lansavori. Tapio Virtanen was next, followed by Chas Mortimer, Dave Potter, John Williams, Gene Romero and Yvon de Hamel. Ditchburn and de Hamel were the only Kawasaki riders on the leaderboard, and Sheen, Newbold and Lansavori were the only ones on the Suzuki. The rest were all TZ750 Yamahas, right down to 39th place. 1976 saw the last year of the original Prix FIM 750cc series, and it was raced at 9 circuits, but as you will hear, the results from San Carlos were dismissed, so effectively there were 8 scoring rounds. It started at Daytona before moving on to San Carlos in Venezuela, then on to Imola in Italy and Jarama in Spain. The 5th race of the season was to be at Nivelles in Belgium, before going on to Nogaro in France, Silverstone, Assen, and finally Hockenheim for the final race. The title winner would be crowned European champion, but with an ever-widening reach, this was a real world championship. This time the point system got even more complex, with the best 3 results from the first 4 races and the best 3 results from the second 4 races being added together for the final points tally. Spanish rider Victor Palomo came home first and was the last rider to be crowned as the Prix FIM 750cc champion. But it was mired in controversy. He won 3 races on aggregate, despite not winning a single heat. This was the first time I had come across the great Nico Bakker, and it was a Bakker framed bow TZ750 engine bike that helped Palomo finally get the title he had been fighting for since day 1 of the championship. Johnny Cecotto won at Daytona, and it was Steve Baker who was credited with first at San Carlos, although at the time it appeared that Gary Nixon had won. If Nixon had been awarded the victory in Venezuela, then he would have won the World Championship by 1 point. Nixon protested the results in Venezuela, and in the end the FIM just threw out all the results of the event, thus denying his appeal but cancelling all the points earned at the event. Michel Rougerie won at Imola, and then John Newbold incredibly came home first on Sheen's old Suzuki at Girama. That meant at the halfway point of the season, Victor Palomo was way out of touch, with only 12 points to his name, while the leader, Michel Rougerie, already had 32 points under his belt. Even after the Belgian Grand Prix, Palomo's chances looked slim, but with 3 aggregate wins in the last 3 races, he managed to finally lift the title he had fought so hard over the years for. The final official standings were Victor Palomo of Spain on 57 points, Gary Nixon from the USA on 47 points, John Newbold from the UK on 37 points, Michel Rougerie of France on 32 points, and Dave Potter from the UK on 26 points. From 1977, the series was renamed as the Formula 750 World Championship, and it was given full World Championship status for the first time. It retained the controversial aggregate points system though, and 11 rounds were scheduled, but race 2 at Daytona and race 2 at the Salzburg Ring were abandoned due to rain, and Girama was run as a single race as had become standard. It was a long season with many new circuits added, including a second American round and even a round in Canada. The season started at Daytona. Steve Baker won overall, with fellow American Kenny Roberts finishing second, and Japanese rider and future fan favourite Takazumi Katayama finishing third. When the second race wasn't run due to rain, full points were given on the results of the first race. Then in Italy at Imola, Roberts celebrated a double. Baker was second, and the now aging Giacomo Agostini, favourite of the home crowd, came in third. In Spain at Girama, there was only 1 race on the programme and Baker won it, with Frenchman Christian Saron second and Hubert Regal from Monaco finishing third. Christian Estrosi used home advantage to celebrate a double at the new French circuit at Dijon-Prenois, with Swiss rider Philippe Coulon finishing second and championship leader Baker third. Baker fought back with a vengeance at Brands Hatch in England, where he had a double win. Up-and-coming star Ron Haslam came home second, and another Brit, John Newbold, on the aging Suzuki was third. At the Salzburg Ring in Austria, only 1 race was run due to rain again. Baker won again, with Agostini second and Christian Saron third. Baker got another double win at Zolder in Belgium, where the Italian new boy Marco Lucinelli was second and Katayama third. In Assen at the Cathedral of Speed, Baker and Lucinelli both got 1 win and 1 second place in each of the 2 races, but Lucinelli was given the overall win, with Saron in 3rd place again. On their return to the States at the iconic Laguna Seca track, local legend Skip Axland won overall, with Baker in 2nd overall, and Australian Greg Hansford with the Kawasaki came in 3rd. Spurred on by his result at Laguna Seca, Hansford did even better at Canada's Mosport Park, where he pulled off a double win. This time, the home advantage helped Yvon de Hamel bring the 2nd Kawasaki home in 2nd overall, and Baker finished 3rd. In the finale of the season, for the first official world title of the 750 class at Hockenheim, Giacomo Agostini pulled off a very unexpected double, with Katayama claiming second and Italian Armando Tarraca finishing third. That meant that Steve Baker had the most emphatic title-winning season we had ever seen. His final points tally was 151 points, and the second place rider, Christian Saron of France, had just 55 points. Agostini came home third on 45, with Marco Lucinelli fourth on 40 points. Takazumi Katayama rounded off the top five, and all of them were riding the TZ750 Yamaha. Greg Hansford, the only non-Yamaha rider in the top 10, finishing 7th overall. His teammate Yvon de Hamel was back in 16th place, tied with the up-and-coming Ron Haslam from the UK. Steve Baker was the only rider to score in every round and was crowned the new world champion, the first time that title had ever really been the world champion too. He won 9 races overall and 5 rounds on aggregate, finishing in second and third on aggregate in all of the other rounds. His consistency was unbelievable, especially when you consider he had never even tested or raced at several of the circuits. The second year of the Formula 750 World Championship in '78 saw some major changes, and Daytona was dropped as the season opener. It was held over 10 different circuits, and unlike the previous year when Steve Baker won absolutely convincingly, this time it was decided only in the last race of the season. The season began instead at Imola in Italy, and Johnny Cecotto won race 1 and Christian Saron race 2. But the aggregate score meant that Cecotto won the round ahead of Steve Baker and Christian Saron in third. There was only one race at the Castellet in France on the next round, and Cecotto was again the winner, this time ahead of Kenny Roberts and reigning champion Steve Baker, who had now become the championship specialist. The third round took place in the UK at Brands Hatch, and Kenny Roberts celebrated a double win ahead of Johnny Cecotto and Patrick Pons from France. The fourth round was now at the Österreichring in Spielberg in Austria. Roberts won again ahead of Cecotto in second, and this time it was Italian Gianfranco Banera who joined them on the podium. All the leading bikes were the Yamaha TZ, with only Greg Hansford and Yvon de Hamel on Kawasaki's. Yamaha dominated not only the starting field, but also the results as well. The fifth round returned to Jurama in Spain, and as usual was run as a single race. Roberts celebrated a hat-trick with his third win in a row. Cecotto finished second for the third time in a row, and Saron completed the podium this time. This meant that Roberts and Cecotto were neck and neck in the championship, with the rest of the field falling behind. The sixth round was in Germany at Hockenheim, which had traditionally been the final race of the year. In 1978 that honour was given to Mosport Park, but already it seemed like a 2-horse race. However, Saron won in Germany ahead of Gianfranco Banera and Greg Hansford, who unbelievably managed to bring the Kawasaki home in third place. Roberts came home in fourth, and a DNF from Cecotto meant Roberts was closing the gap in the championship. The seventh round was at Nivelles in Belgium, and here Cecotto celebrated a double win. But the surprise was when local rider Hervé Moineau finished second. Banera took third, and because Roberts came away with no points, Cecotto extended his lead again, but it was still far from over. The eighth round was at Assen, and it often threw up some surprises. Gianfranco Banera took his very first Grand Prix victory in the Netherlands, storming home to victory, followed by fan favourite Takazumi Katayama in second. Championship leader Johnny Cecotto came in third, and a second no-points round for Roberts just seemed to confirm Johnny Cecotto's place at the top of the points table in the championship. This meant the title would be decided in the Americas. The last 2 rounds of the 1978 championship would take place at Laguna Seca in the USA and Mosport Park in Canada. Laguna Seca helped Kenny Roberts revive his championship chances with a double win, and as Cecotto didn't score at all, the gap was closed by a significant margin. None of the Europeans travelled to race at Laguna Seca, so it was an all-American whitewash. The previous year's champion Steve Baker came home second and Mike Baldwin got third. At the final round of the year, the points tally was so close that it could have been an epic decider. Mike Baldwin was the surprise winner in the end, with Kenny Roberts chasing him home in second. Yvonne de Hamel came home third, and this was one of only 2 podium places for Kawasaki, but more significantly, that meant that every podium place for the whole year, other than those 2, were riders on Yamaha TZ750s. They really had dominated like never before. Johnny Cecotto came home 10th overall, which gave him 6 championship points, just 5 points ahead of Kenny Roberts. Cecotto was the champion and won with 97 points ahead of Kenny Roberts on 92, and they were miles ahead of everyone else. But the championship was marred by the European riders not travelling to the States. The prize money put up meant that it just wasn't financially feasible for them. Remember, this was during a time when the riders were paid a pittance. Kenny Roberts and Barry Sheene were determined to make that change, but it hadn't happened yet. They argued that they were the ones taking the ultimate risks, but the FIM and the circuit administrators were still taking the lion's share. Christian Saron took 3rd place on 55 points, Gianfranco Banera 4th on 53 points, Patrick Pons was 5th on 40 points, and the previous year's champion Steve Baker finished down in 6th with just 38 points. Top 10 were all Yamaha TZ750s. In the final year of the Formula 750 Championship, there were many changes, but the biggest was a complete change to the point system. All points from every race would be counted, so the aggregate system was scrapped, as well as the idea of only counting points from a limited number of races. This time, more than ever before, consistency and entry to the maximum number of races would be rewarded most. The championship would be run over 10 rounds, with a total of 20 races, and the circus began at Mugello in Italy. At Mugello, Christian Saron won race 1, and newcomer Virginia Ferrari on a Suzuki won race 2. It showed immediately that the new point system was going to be a wild ride. Because Ferrari was second in race 1, he came away with the biggest points tally of 27 points. The second and third place put Johnny Cecotto second with 22 points, and Saron, who had a poor race 2, was down on just 18 points. Patrick Pons was next on 12 points, so the leaderboard was spread out immediately, and with a maximum of 30 points available from every race weekend, this championship could change fast. Next, it was Brands Hatch in the UK, and we saw Johnny Cecotto pull off a double win. Greg Hansford on his Kawasaki finished second overall on 16 points, followed by 3 riders on 12 points. They were Marko Martikainen from Finland, Swiss rider Michel Frucci, and Mike Baldwin from the US. Christian Saron picked up just 10 points with another inconsistent weekend. That meant Cecotto was storming ahead in the championship with 52 points, already 24 points ahead of Saron in second on 28 points. Next race was at Nagoro in France. Patrick Pons won race 1 and was second in race 2, so scored 27 points overall. His countryman Christian Estrozzi got a second and third place for 22 points, and Greg Hansford brought the Kawasaki home as a winner in race 2, which put him third best on points over the weekend on 15. Cecotto was a non-finisher in both races. For some reason, the Swiss decided to hold their race at Port Ricard, the French circuit at Le Castellet, and Cecotto was the overall winner, again with 27 points. Michele Frucci was second overall, and then another newcomer, Sadeo Asami from Japan, finished third, with 22 points overall. Swiss rider Jacques Cornu was the only other rider to finish both races and collected 9 points, although Patrick Pons did pick up 10 points for his third place in race 2. The next stop was the Austrian Grand Prix at the Österreichring. Home fans saw an unexpected double win by local hero Werner Nenning, who scored 30 points. A second and third place earned Patrick Pons 22 points total, and Hubert Regal from Monaco came away with 16 points, with a weekend that was more consistent than spectacular. Cecotto had his second non-scoring weekend, so the championship was tightening up now. A transatlantic journey took the riders to Canada's Mosport Park next, and the weekend belonged to Patrick Pons. With a first and second place, he was the top point scorer with 27 points. The second race was won by Michele Frucci, who collected 21 points overall, but the second highest points tally for the weekend went to an unknown Steve Gervais, who came away with 22 points and a very unexpected second and third place. Cecotto didn't score again, so the title really was wide open. Kenny Roberts came back as a disruptor just to say, "I'm still the fastest" at the American round in Laguna Seca. He scored a double win, and although some of the Europeans did come over, the Americans took full advantage on home soil. Richard Schlachter came home second in the first race and scored 20 points in total, with Dave Aldana taking third place on points with 16. Michele Frucci managed 15 points, but Pons only scored 6, and Cecotto, Asami, Bonera all scored nothing. Gene Romero proved another disruptor, taking second place in the second race to score 12 points, so it was a weekend for the Americans to shine. The Dutch round at Assen belonged to Boe van Dormen, who scored 27 points with a win in race 1 and a second in race 2. Michele Frucci and Gianfranco Bonera both collected 18 points, and it was a rare non-scoring weekend for Patrick Pons, so it was off to Germany with the title still there for the taking. The Hockenheimring, Pons got a double win, and because Frucci only scored 1 point, he secured the title of Formula 750 champion. Saron scored 22, and his countryman Marc Fontaine, who had had a steady if not spectacular season, came away with 18 points. The final was an unusual race in the Yugoslavian city of Rijeka. Michele Frucci won race 1 and Johnny Cecotto won race 2, both finishing second in the other race. But 2 third places meant Patrick Pons took 20 points, and he was already the champion, and everyone knew it. Pons had come second in his first year of the championship in 1974, and it took him 5 long years to get his hands on the trophy. He would be remembered as the last ever Formula 750cc champion. The final standings were Patrick Pons first with 154 points, Michele Frucci second on 132 points, Johnny Cecotto third on 126 points, and Sadeo Asami fourth with 73 points. Gianfranco Bonera rounded out the top 5 with 70 points. Marc Fontaine, Christian Saron and Raymond Roche following close behind. The idea of creating a championship superior to the other Grand Prix classes just didn't quite work, because after Sheen in the first year, only one brand and one model of motorcycle dominated. That bike was the Yamaha TZ750. What the championship did do was highlight the riders who had to be the best to tame the unruly TZ750s. It put the title in the hands of the specialists who could do something to improve the TZ package. Along with the riders, it was the tuners and frame builders that were often the unsung heroes of the day. Sadly, the FIM discontinued the 750cc class after the 1979 season. The Formula 750 World Championship was a series that shaped the future of racing, and the final point scoring scheme is still pretty much used unchanged until today. Stars were born and black clouds were inevitable, but it raised the profile of the riders above the bikes in a way that many race series have failed to do. The Formula 750 class became about how good the riders were and how well they could learn a new track quickly. When you have names like Johnny Cicotto, Steve Baker, Kenny Roberts, Barry Sheen, Christian Saron, Patrick Pons, Boet van Dormen, Victor Palomo, Jack Finley, John Dodds, Tepi Lansaburi, Jarno Saarinen, Greg Hansford, Yvonne de Hamel, and even the great Agostini and more on the roll call, you can see why this was truly a historic race series. Many tried, but there were only room for 9 winners. Heroes one and all, and they should all be remembered. As well as the winners, it gave many future stars a springboard from which they could launch their careers. I hope this helps you remember the titanic battles that took place over the golden years, and I hope you will search out footage of individual races from the series to help you relive those moments of joy, desperation and heartbreak that happened all those years ago. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll consider supporting the channel. Please don't use the YouTube giving button because they take most of it. Instead, head over to our website where you can find the best biker t-shirts in our shop. We do plenty of custom work too, so if you've got an idea for a design, just give me a shout. There's also our Redbubble shop, where you can find mugs, hats, wall art, sweatshirts, phone cases and more. Over 60 products with great quality printing, delivered worldwide. Basically, if you can print on it, we can usually supply it somehow. Just drop me a line via the contact page on the website. Don't forget to check out the community page for promo codes and discounts too. And while you're at it, take a look at our blog. It's packed with articles on everything from maintenance tricks to stories from ride-outs and track days and other adventures. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with me through this epic journey, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Join the best motorcycle community on YouTube and be the first to see any new videos. Let me know if you'd like more videos like this one too. I know it might be different from my usual stuff, but I thought it was an interesting story.
Anyway, that's it for today. Let me know in the comments what your favourite Hondas are. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always I do look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments. I will finish answering all the comments in time, but I do have a bit of a backlog. If you got this far and haven't already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing does help a lot and means you get to find out first when our regular updates, news, views and other videos go out. Please share the video with anyone you think will be interested too if you could. That is the one thing that helps the most. It kicks the YouTube algorithm into gear and helps to get the channel out there to new viewers. Thanks for watching. I hope you get some great riding in, and remember, keep your spanners close and your keys even closer. Ride free, everyone.
For the vital second leg, another 24 laps. The first leg winner, Steve Baker. Next to him, the second place man, Mick Grant, and who will it be this time? Mick Grant, perhaps. Or Christian Saron, the Frenchman, who was third. Patrick Pons, his teammate, 7th in the first leg. Hubert Rigal from Monte Carlo, 8th. All set then. Out of the pits, onto the circuit, and up to the grid come those riders. And amongst them, Englishman Dave Potter in that pole position. Mick Grant on the Kawasaki. Barry Ditchburn, his teammate. Warren Willing, the brilliant Australian. There's Christian Saron, the Frenchman, in 4th position in the championship. And that's Christian Estrosi, another Frenchman. And the man himself, Steve Baker, leading the championship. Up goes the engaged gear board because it's a clutch start. They're in first gear. And away they go. And it's a superb start by Steve Baker, and he leads into Paddock Bend. Behind him, it's Mick Grant and Dave Potter. They come out of Druids Bend, it's Baker leading Mick Grant, Yamaha leading Kawasaki, American leading Englishman, and Dave Potter in third position. To Westfield, and it's Baker, Grant, Potter, then Christian Sarron, the Frenchman, and Ditchburn going through on the inside. Still Baker, and it's Potter. Potter's closing. Dave Potter is closing right up on Mick Grant, the Englishman in second position, as they go through down towards Clearways Bend to complete the first lap. Round the sweeping right-hander, almost 2.6 miles completed. Steve Baker really pulling the stops out with a clear circuit in front of him. Baker, number 12, Mick Grant, and across the line goes the Yamaha into Paddock Bend for the second time. Let alone pass the flying American up to Druids for the second time. Barry Ditchburn in fourth position behind Dave Potter. So it's Baker, Grant, Dave Potter, and then Ditchburn. 2 Yamahas and 2 Kawasaki's in the first 4. To Surtees Bend on lap 2. And Potter's gone through. Dave Potter goes through on the inside to take Mick Grant in second position. A brilliant move. So, as they go round almost at the end of the second lap, Dave Potter, the private owner on the 10 Broad Dune Yamaha, moves up into second place ahead of the Works Kawasaki's. Across the line, streaks Baker to complete lap 2. Potter in second position. Then the 2 green meanies, the Kawasaki's, of Grant and Ditchburn. From St Mary Cray, looking great on the Yamaha, chasing Steve Baker on the Yamaha, and behind them, the 2 Kawasaki's. Out of Westfield, Baker. Potter's closing right up on Baker's rear mudguard. It's getting to be a really close thing. Can Potter possibly take the American and the lead? Out of Clearways, Baker leads, Potter second. But it's number 14, Barry Ditchburn on the Kawasaki, up into third place ahead of his teammate Mick Grant. And there is Ditchburn up Hillwood Hill, chasing the 2 Yamahas ahead of him hard. And Barry Ditchburn is right behind Sarrell, looking for an opportunity to pass all the way round the circuit. Newbold, Willing is up into 6th position. Pons is down a place, and Newbold is still holding that 5th place on the 3-cylinder Suzuki. Lap 14. Sarrell and Ditchburn up Halewood Hill together, into Druids together, out of Druids together, and down to Graham Hill. Along the Cooper Street, and Ditchburn shaping up to pass. This is where he did it once and he tried before. And he does it again. Barry Ditchburn rides around Sarrell as Warren Willing goes ahead of John Newbold. The places are changing through the field as the pace is hotting up and the race gets towards its closing stages, and Regal has got ahead of Patrick Pons. But still, 32, Steve Baker leads. He's setting the pace. Haslam second as they go into Dingledell.